This meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School Board to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. As a reminder, tonight's board meeting is to discuss the posted board agenda items only, board consideration of short-term virtual learning options for students in K through 6. Comments regarding all other COVID-19 protocols will be heard in our open forum at the Monday, August 23rd board meeting during open forum number 2. Please be reminded that you'll have 3 minutes to speak. At the conclusion of your 3 minutes, I will ask you to conclude your presentation and return to your seat. Disruption of tonight's board meeting by audience members will not be tolerated. The audience is asked to refrain from comments, cheering, booing, etc. Anyone who persists in disrupting the meeting may be asked to leave. And we are ready to get started with open forum. Thank you. The board and administration welcome and appreciate comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. Tonight is a called board meeting, so there's only one open forum to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. The speaker should identify his or her name and group affiliation, if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if the person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. It is expected you will observe the rules of courtesy and respect for the rights of others when addressing the board. The board president always reserves the right to set procedures and standards for audience communication with the board. If you wish to speak at open forum, please fill out one of the cards that's located on the table out in the entry hall. All right, we will get started with Barbara Gibson. You come up to the podium right here. As soon as you start speaking, the timer will show up here, and they'll have you 3 minutes. Okay.
Okay, my name is Barbara Gibson. The reason I'm here is I have 3 grandchildren in the HEBISD schools. I've been a registered nurse for 25 years, and I've witnessed the miracle of birth and the agony of losing a child. The grief of losing a child is paralyzing. Losing one child to COVID without taking every precaution is one too many. Nothing's 100%, but if we use the precautions at our disposal, we can decrease the numbers of cases. Kids are kids, and there's only a few wearing masks. They're not going to follow along. If their parents want them to do it, and the kids aren't doing it, they're not going to keep doing it. There was no pediatric beds last Friday in trauma area E, which is where we are. Right now, they're filled with COVID and RSV patients. And if we can decrease the need for COVID beds, then the beds will be available if your children need it for other reasons than those. Masks and hand washing, social distancing, and virtual learning are options and non-invasive measures we can do to protect our children. We're not asking them to be forced to take the vaccine. We just want these precautions until there is one available. To not listen to politicians for public health guidance, we need to look at the healthcare experts. How many children are being sacrificed before we treat this as a crisis center?
All right, thank you, Ms. Gibson. Again, we're trying to talk this evening about the virtual learning options. So please, we've received hundreds of emails. We understand that this is a very passionate subject. We're reading all the emails. We're considering everything that's being said, and we're trying to follow our policies as well as we can. But this evening, we're only talking about virtual learning, so please keep your comments to addressing virtual learning only. Next up is Leslie Hawkins.
Hello, my name is Leslie Hawkins. I live in Bedford. This is my 8-year-old son, Patrick. He is a 3rd grader at Spring Garden Elementary. Unfortunately, we lost his grandfather in June to long COVID complications, and despite teacher night, there was only one staff member in the entire school wearing a mask. And when he went to school on his first day, there were only 2 other students. We now know that vaccinated individuals can carry and transmit the Delta variant with the same viral load as an unvaccinated person, creating an extremely unsafe environment for our unvaccinated children in the classroom. You are asking us to send our unvaccinated children to school with no mask mandate or meaningful COVID safety protocols at a time when pediatric COVID cases have increased 84% in the last 3 weeks alone. As of Friday, there were 0 staffed pediatric ICU beds available. These numbers reflect the latest data that shows the Delta variant is at least 50% more contagious and much more dangerous for our children. Although a virtual learning option is imperative, it is not enough. Not all families have the choice to stay home with their children and are forced to send them to in-person school during a global pandemic. You cannot leave these students behind. They have a right to learn in a safe and equitable environment. That is why I'm asking you to implement an emergency mask mandate effective immediately. Take the lead of Dallas and Richardson ISDs and make these decisions based on science and require masks for every teacher, staff member, student, and visitor. Thank you for your considerations.
Thank you. Kristen Smith.
Thank you for giving me a moment of your time. I am a Donna Park teacher. I am a language acquisition coach. I understand tonight we're talking about a virtual option, which I know that you and all the administrators and board members sat down and sat with PDSA in mind and decided to offer a district with a no virtual option. With respect, those of us who have started our jobs are very pleased with our attendance. Kids are happy to be back at school. We all feel safe by using our protocols, hand gel, those that choose to use masks, the cleaning of the classrooms. What I'm here to advocate for is if we choose to do and step back from the plan that our original return to learning and change our mind and go to virtual, that you will lose someone like myself and many others. We were told that we would step up into a different role. We will always do what's right. However, I have to advocate for my language acquisition students that I am a key component to their success. 26% of Donna Park are second language speakers, and they're all there. I not only provide specific instructions to the most intensive students, I meet with teachers to look over data and decide what strategies, what lessons, what scaffolding. I even co-teach. If I'm not available or my cohorts are not available district-wide, our gap for our LEP students will only increase. And I say this in advocation for my other coworkers who are instructional specialists and coaches. We are teams. We want what's best for our students on campus, and if we were pulled away from that, in our hearts, we know that our students who are here in person to learn would take a step back. So I give you please, and I ask you please to just think about if you offer virtual learning, where will you staff this and who will be at that time? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. See, our next speaker is Karen Pruitt.
My name is Karen Pruitt, and I am the instructional specialist at Donna Park Elementary. I'm starting my 28th year here in HEB, and I would be lying if I told you that I wasn't nervous or hesitant to come up here and talk, but not because I'm an employee, but because I have connections to so many of you, either having taught your children, taught you, grandchildren, or that my husband is taking care of some of you too. And sometimes when you're that connected, it's hard to speak up. But as Kirsten just noted, the plan for pulling those of us in these other roles to teach the virtual, we are team players. We are happy to do that, but at the expense of what? We have so many students that have suffered an 18-month educational loss that just a few weeks ago, they were your focus. When we hired the ESSER teachers, it was all about closing the gap, and we've got to get these kids caught up. We have to do this. And now, I have to wonder where those kids are now in the mix. And, we had, and these are as of Friday, so I don't know about today, but as of Friday, we had 22,158 students enrolled. Our attendance rate was 98.3%. Our kids are coming. They're here. They're happy. They want to learn. I know there's lots of medical data out there, and I get all that. But we have had our kids here. And I don't want to see the vast majority of the kids suffer in closing that gap by pulling staff to do. And I don't know what the answer is. I wish I had a solution for you. I don't know what the answer is. But I guess my question is it really needed with 98% attendance and 22,000 kids enrolled? So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Ramsey.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Jennifer Ramsey. I teach at Trinity High School. And the reason I'm here tonight, I'm going to start because I'm a speech teacher, so we have to start with a quote, right? It's my job. Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one learned in school. It's one of my favorite quotes as an educator that Albert Einstein gave. And the reason is this. Our kids are learning from us, not just in our curriculum, but in our response to this. They know how they feel cared for, and they know when they don't. And I think we have the 98% attendance rate that we're seeing because our parents have a long history of coming to trust us as a district. I want to tell you just a little bit about what brought me back here. I was the coach at Trinity from 2002 to 2006. I became aware that in the middle of a pandemic, that the debate coach position was open again last year, sorry. I had high-risk family members at home, but I loved this district, and I loved that particular job, and I loved this student body. So we talked with our high-risk family members, and I said, I can trust HEB. They will take care of me. And they were by far, when I was scared last year, I needed something, this district was here at every level. I felt so well cared for, and I still do. I'm not here to complain, and I would not want to be in your shoes. That's all I gotta say there. It's a tough job. It's just crazy right now. Everything is going on. I have an aspect on my resume that would normally get blown over that might help this discussion, and that is from 2013 up until that moment, I was 100% a virtual teacher. I saw virtual education being done very well in places, and I also worked for some places that I felt were more warehouses. My concern, if we do not offer this option, is that our students are going to be placed in the kinds of warehousing schools. I won't name them, but they're the two major ones that come up on an internet search. I never had at those two places a class size of less than 500 kids. Parents who feel desperate because their children don't have options are not going to be able to keep coming in this kind of situation. They're going to have to either homeschool or put their kids somewhere. I want that choice to be something that we offer them because they're going to remember how we cared for them and they're going to stay in relationship with us when this passes, and this too shall pass. And they will remember that we cared for them, and we'll be able to keep them on track a lot easier than if we send them away. And that's what will happen with that group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. Next is Melissa Trujillo.
Hello, my name is Melissa Trujillo. I'm a registered nurse. I've worked in the hospital setting for the last 15 years. I'm speaking here today not only as a nurse, but as a mother of 3. I'm urging you today to forge your own path. Stand up for the children and the families that you serve. Universal masking in schools should be a top priority. If this cannot be accomplished, at minimum, you need to provide virtual learning options for any parent who requests it without limiting the number of participants. Parents should have the options and be able to control the exposures that their children have. As adults, it's important that we pave the way for compromise and respect. We need to stop squabbling and be examples to our children. The constant upheaval of adults is damaging to children's social and emotional well-being, significantly more than mask wearing ever will. The measures you implemented last year should be continued. I understand they are very limited by the governor's orders. However, just as you would in school, you have to show that bullying will not be tolerated. The demands of one should not outweigh the concerns of the masses. COVID is a public health crisis that cannot be discredited. Continuing school with reckless disregard to the known risks and blindly following orders borders on child endangerment. If virtual options are not provided, schools should have universal masking in place, contact tracing, close contact should be quarantined, adults need to be limited on campus, desk shields should be used for all students, distancing needs to be improved, especially with dismissal and drop-off procedures. We're not doing enough to ensure the safety of children. These measures need to be in place during surges and until vaccination becomes available to children under 12. In my practice, I've watched many people suffer with COVID. Some die and some recover. The long-lasting effects of COVID vary for everyone. It's a risk I'm unwilling to take for my own children. I urge you to be more proactive in your approach to dealing with COVID policies. It would be better to err on the side of caution than standing in a room full of empty desks wondering if we could have done more. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brody Mulligan.
Good evening. If I could first of all start by thanking the members of this board as well as Dr. Chapman for your amazing stewardship and leadership during the entirety of this COVID-19 coronavirus crisis. I know I speak for the entirety of the community when I say that we truly appreciate the work that you do, and we understand the hard job you have. As an individual, I'm speaking today as a person who has not only family members that attend Arbor Creek and Trinity, but also as a member of the Medical Reserve Corps that has served during the H1N1 pandemic and in this current pandemic response. State officials have confirmed that the Delta variant is now the predominant variant strain of COVID-19 in this area and in the state of Texas. Hospitalizations in the state of Texas have increased by more than 400% in the last month. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in internal documents made public last month describe the variant as following: more transmissible than the common cold and influenza, and the viruses that cause smallpox, MERS, SARS, and Ebola. The report went on to say, quote, "The Delta variant is as contagious as chickenpox." Last Thursday, the DFW Council Hospital of North Texas stated there were no available pediatric ICU beds in the 19-county North Texas trauma region. This figure represented the highest number of hospitalized pediatric patients ever during the entire pandemic. While I recognize that there are a number of complex legalistic challenges that face this board with regard to masking and other procedures, what I'd like to advocate for today is to ensure that those who are most vulnerable, immunocompromised, specifically with the individual Ms. Ann Miller, who asked me to speak on her behalf today, who has in her family and her extended family, upon many students, which they all rely on making sure that there's backups for grandparents. They are immunocompromised and not able to take that risk to care for her. Providing a virtual option for the select students who have immunocompromised needs, who have specific medical needs, is the right thing to do. It's the compassionate thing to do. And it is logistically and financially feasible without incurring infringement upon legal issues and save lives. We know that virtual education has many issues. We know overwhelmingly our students want to get back in the classroom, and we know that overwhelming number of people are able to do so. At the present moment, a vaccine is not available for children under 12. I'm asking the board to please consider making an option for those who are immunocompromised or have specific circumstances which would present a great risk to their health to have a virtual education option for K through 6 schools. And I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulligan. Our next speaker is Charlotte Brashears.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Brashears. I'm speaking on behalf of Sonia Dirkso. Due to a recent death in her family, she was unable to attend in person for tonight's board meeting, and I'd like to share, well, it says my thoughts, but it's her thoughts. My thoughts on having a virtual learning option. I'm a daughter of a retired teacher who taught 35 and a half years, 32 of those years being in HEBISD. I've seen behind the scenes what it takes to do the lesson plans, provide makeup work for 6 students, teach the class, and still have work to do after hours. The teachers can't take another year of teaching both virtually and in person. It's too much for anybody. There either needs to be dedicated staff who only teach virtually, or a virtual platform that's just a place to see and turn in assignments if you're out sick. There's not enough money to pay teachers to do both virtual and in person, like they had to endure last year. Teachers will quit and go do something else much less stressful to be able to pay their bills. We will lose our excellent teachers if we push another virtual and in-person year on them. Furthermore, the kids need to be in person, as evidenced by the low star and benchmark test scores last year. I have a boy-girl twins, and my daughter is still behind and is struggling so much that she just qualified for SPED in math for this year. She was quarantined due to close contact 3 different times last school year, but never had a positive COVID result. Virtual learning was a disastrous to her education. These students have suffered enough, as have our teachers. We need to be supporting our teachers, not giving them more work. Teachers need to focus on the kids in their actual classroom and not have to split their attention between in-person students and those online. I understand some feel there's a need for virtual to see and turn in work if they're quarantined due to COVID and have to quarantine 10 days. Prior to COVID, if you were sick, a parent would come and pick up any assignments. But if the parent is also sick, assignments on the Chromebook would be an easier way to get work turned in without needing to come to school if under quarantine. I still believe the best option for all is in-person learning and staff focused only on students who are in the classroom. Thank you. Sonia Dirkso. Her address is 3608 Devon Court, Bedford. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Brashears. Our next speaker is Stephanie Smith.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Smith. Today, when I picked up my 2nd grader, she was in tears. She had no issues wearing a mask at school. She wanted me to come and eat with her at lunch, and I told her I would, without realizing that the schools were not allowing visitors this week. She usually brings a lunch. However, we were going to buy the meal today. When I did not show up, she was upset and could not get her mask back on. After eating, usually she has no problem putting her mask on. Her teacher told her that she could not help her, and others seemed impatient with her. At recess, she sat alone and cried. I am her parent, and I want her to wear a mask because she has asthma, and our family has immune-compromised members. Yet no teacher could help my child because of stupid government and school regulations. This way is too difficult. When I pick her up from school, very few kids and teachers are wearing masks. Kids are grouped together as if there is no such thing as COVID or Delta variant. As cases rise in our schools and our children get sick and have to be hospitalized, a lot of parents will be furious that you have not done your part to protect them, but choose not to. Our hospitals are full now, and it is only going to get worse. I am begging you to make a mask mandate and allow teachers to help your kids. Stephanie Smith. Thank you.
Ms. Smith. Sorry if I mispronounced the next name. Is it Deontay Hall? Deontay, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Deontay Hall. I am a parent of, I'm a Bedford resident. I'm a parent of 3 HEB students, 2 of whom are in elementary school. I am PTA president at 2 schools, and I am also a substitute teacher. I am here to ask the board to decide against a temporary virtual classroom. As a parent of 3 HEBISD students, 2 of whom are in elementary school, I understand the concerns and the fears. I understand them on a deeper level than most parents, as I signed up to be a substitute teacher last year. I subbed 125 days of the 140 days we were in person, and I continue to be a substitute teacher this year. I taught in person, virtually, and hybrid. I am currently substituting in 1st grade and will continue to do so through October. I am here to tell you firsthand, our children have paid the price and will continue to pay the price of virtual school. I currently have a classroom of extremely bright students, but the majority of them cannot legibly write their names. They've been learning primarily through screens instead of with pencil and paper. While virtual learning may sound like a feasible option to those of who are in favor of a virtual classroom, there are many requirements I'm not sure our district is in a position to provide. Who's going to teach these virtual classes? What will happen to the students who will lose their teachers to virtual classrooms? Where will those students attend school when the temporary virtual classroom ends? How much further behind will virtual students fall? I've heard rumors that you're considering staffing virtual classrooms with librarians and specialists that we've just put into positions to help bring our kids back up to speed. And now we're considering taking those specialists away from the students who need them most. I took my 1st graders to the library for the first time today. The joy on their faces when I told them they would be able to go inside the library was mind-blowing. These babies are excited to be at school. They want to learn. They want to be at school. I believe our district can keep our students safe with additional safety protocols that do not include implementing a mask mandate. And I am asking you that you direct all resources to create a safe in-person environment instead of a virtual one.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lydia Meeks.
Hi. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you for giving us a forum to speak our concerns. My name is Lydia Meeks. I graduated from OD Bell in 2014. Attended HEB schools throughout my entire life. I am a product of HEB schooling. Not only am I an alum, but I'm an aunt of 2 girls in the HEB district, 2 girls who are not eligible to get a vaccine yet. My niece is a high risk, born at 23 weeks and now is 7 years old. My other niece lives with my 2 parents who are also high risk. My whole family is a high risk for COVID. If one of us got COVID, it would be devastating to my whole family. And I know that is the story of so many families today. Although I only graduated 7 years ago, I can guarantee that most of us in this room do not know what it's like to be a child during this time, where your safety is a constant debate. Numbers do not lie. In the state of Texas, we have had over 3 million confirmed cases, and over 54,000 of those cases have died. Research has shown that the Delta variant has up to 1,000 times higher viral load than other variants and is up to 200% more transmissionable, with a rate of transmission of 6 to 9. This means that one kid, one teacher, one bus driver, one person can infect 6 to 9 people. How long will it take for a whole school to become infected, and how many children will never recover from this? The resources are also limited for our children in these hospitals. These numbers will continue to rise if we do not do something. The children are looking at us to protect them. This district has taken away so many options. Some other people spoke about high attendance numbers, but it's because there are no other options. And it's you show up to school or you unenroll. That's it. Can you imagine how difficult this is for parents who have to work all day, or for parents who are unable to homeschool, who have learning disabilities, who can't even teach their own kid? A virtual option is beyond necessary, but it cannot be the only solution. It is the bare minimum, and it should have been offered a week ago. But at least it is an option for those who are at high risk and ineligible for the vaccine at this time. We must protect vulnerable kids who cannot get vaccinated. We must protect those kids 12 and under. We need to understand that this is not a political issue, and it's not about what side you are on. The only side that matters is that the children who we are putting at risk every single day. I've also created a petition for HEBISD that now has over 800 signatures, 822 at this moment to be exact. That is a majority. Parents are wanting this to be done. I'm asking you to save lives and to protect those children, to protect my family, to protect all of these families that are out here speaking and those who cannot speak tonight, to give us more options, and please allow for virtual learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meeks. The next speaker is Theodore Sither.
Members of the board, first of all, thank you so much for this meeting, for this forum, and for hearing our views. My name is Theodore Sither. We're proud residents of Euless. I'm a father of an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. My 8-year-old son is enrolled in Harmony Public Schools this semester. During this public health crisis, parents need options. Parents like myself and my wife, we need options for our kids to keep our kids safe. I think that a virtual option is absolutely necessary, though I understand that it's not a complete solution, because many parents do not have the ability to send their kids, to stay home with their kids, to do virtual learning with them. Which is why we need to implement safety protocols that includes a mask mandate. Masks save lives. Virtual option and a mask mandate go hand in hand, and I implore this board to consider that at your next meeting. I understand this is not on your agenda tonight. And I implore you to consider that. And members of your community are behind you. I also wanted to read a letter that a parent sent to this board earlier. She wasn't able to attend tonight to testify because her child, after 3 days of attending school, contracted COVID-19. Her name is Christina Hutchins. And she writes, "I'm writing to you with unfortunate news that my daughter Jillian has tested positive for COVID. She woke up with fever, sore throat, congestion, and a cough. It took 3 days in school with students and faculty who were unmasked for her to get COVID. I am extremely disappointed that more wasn't done to keep my daughter safe. I'm a former HEB teacher and would tell my students daily that my job was to keep them safe. I feel that this is no longer the case, as teachers can't offer that if precautions aren't being enforced in the classroom. I understand that your policy is to keep masks optional. We are all aware now that masks only protect others from the person wearing the mask. So while my daughter was wearing her mask, To keep her peers safe, someone at her school likely exposed her to this deadly virus. So board members, please do consider a mask mandate as well as a virtual option. Thank you. Science is on your side, the evidence is on your side, and I think your community is on your side.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Leslie Lopez.
Well, first of all, I'm going to apologize in advance because I am emotional already. I'm not here as a doctor. I'm not here as a nurse or as a teacher. I'm only here as a mom. I have a 6-year-old who loves school. And all of last year, we took advantage, and we're very, very, very thankful for the virtual option. We took advantage of that all of last year. I want to say the other side, because I've heard so many people say that with the virtual, they were unsuccessful. On the contrary, my child was extremely successful. He was tested for the gifted program through a virtual education of an entire year. It's successful. Give us that opportunity. We've masked, we're vaccinated, we're doing our part. We've done everything we can as a family. We also have a lot of family members who can't be exposed to COVID. We ask you to please give us the opportunity to continue to keep our family and our kids safe. We've done it for 18 months. Please, we don't want to lose that opportunity now. We know that virtual may not be the best option for everybody, but at least for those that might be able to take advantage of this, we can reduce the classroom sizes. We can allow for there to be some safe distance between the classrooms. I will give you a quote from my son, who is only 6 years old. He goes to Hurst-Euless. He's in 1st grade. On his first day, first day he started last week, they went through safety protocol in the school, which was really his first time since he didn't go to actual physical school last year. And he was so excited because they were teaching them how to stay safe in the school, how to get under your desk, how to take those measures, and what's gonna happen if anything, dangerous was to happen in the school. And he said, but Mom, it's so weird. They're teaching us how to stay safe from certain things, but not everybody is wearing a mask. How are they keeping us safe from not getting the virus? He's a smart boy. He's only 6. Give us that opportunity. I'm not here to impose my beliefs on anybody. You have your choice, but don't take mine away. Let me keep my child safe. He begs to go to school, but still understands that we don't want to risk our family. My son's life, as well as all of our kids, is not a gamble. I don't want to take the chance to see how he will react if he contains the virus. I don't want to see if he's going to end up in ICU or he'll be okay. I don't want anybody's kids to have to go through that until it's too late. Please don't take that option from us. Hear us out. If that's the least you can do, please allow us at least that much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Our next speaker is Jessica Luego, or Lugo.
Reserve my comments for next week.
Okay, thank you. Kara Gordon.
Hi, my name is Kara Gordon. I am a mom. I have a 4th grader here in Bedford. And I'm also a former HEB student. In the 80s, I was a Wilshire Elementary student. I'm also a former educator, 10 years in the classroom, former team leader, former instructional specialist. I am here just to ask questions about virtual learning, because I feel like we can't give input on something we don't know enough about. So I just have pointed questions for you guys regarding the virtual learning option. I obviously don't expect an answer. These are just questions I'm posing on behalf of others who feel the way I do. What will the cost or the financial hit be to the district? How will that affect us as taxpayers? How do we plan to staff virtual learning? How will it affect the children who've already been assigned teachers for the year and are in the middle of getting used to their routines? If we, as a district, don't have record of who all is vaxxed in the older grade levels, then why is virtual only an option being discussed for K through 6? That speaks to both sides of the argument. So we're offering it to K-6, but nobody else? To me, that doesn't make any sense. If virtual was mostly ineffective last year, and I witnessed that in my own home, if it was somewhat ineffective, mostly ineffective, why is it even being considered? Because our children thrive in the classroom, and virtual did not meet those needs. How can we as parents or taxpayers provide input on a plan that is not available for us to review? And lastly, how long is this going to be, we say temporary? How long? This school year? The next 2 school years? 2 months? Where do we learn to draw the line? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. And are there more? Next speaker is Kyle Coburn. They left? Okay. All right, Logan Hassinger.
All right, thank you for having us. My name is Logan Hassinger, and I've got 2 kids in the district, kindergarten and 2nd grade. I'll just be very blunt, I'm against the virtual learning, mainly because I've seen it just from my own experience with our 1st grader. We were forced to, I wouldn't say forced, but we enrolled her in Cohen throughout the spring and the summer. She's significantly caught up and is at her grade level today. I've also seen numbers from across the state, but also from different districts across the nation, that virtual learning was ineffective. So while a compromise being a mask mandate, I don't agree, but I think it's a compromise. I think it helps stop the spread to some degree. But, those are great questions earlier. What metrics do we put in place to, identify when we're going to do it? It seems like we're trying to do it now, but when does it come off? Is it a vaccination rate? Is it a death rate that drops to some number? Is it a hospitalization rate? Like, what are we using as a metric to turn it on and off? Right now, it's just up in the air. That we're afraid of a new variant, while very aggressive in its spread. I've got friends of mine that have it today and experienced COVID last year, and it's taken a harder toll on them today. So I'm not going to discredit anything that COVID brings to the table. It's deadly, especially for folks with underlying conditions. Today I looked at Tarrant County's data stats today, and 0% of children under 15 have died. Death is not a fun topic, but 0% under 15. So what does that represent? 75, 80% of our children through K through 12. When we look at the death that has occurred in Tarrant County, 90+%, even across the nation, were severe underlying conditions. So if we're looking at science to say our children need to be at home virtual learning, the science doesn't show that children are getting infected and then therefore taking on hospitalization, passing away. The risk still is there for them passing it on to family members. So a mask mandate at school could very well curb that. My overall statement to you guys is, what metrics are we looking at to turn it off and on? Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I think that is all the speakers who have signed up for this evening. So we are going to move to item 3.01, consideration of a temporary virtual classroom option. Dr. Harrington.
So for the board consideration, we are bringing forward a possible HEBISD temporary virtual classroom option. So tonight what we're going to review the COVID-19 health overview. We'll go over program rationale, possible program design, funding, a proposed timeline, and a communication plan. So we're going to start off with Joy Cohen, our coordinator of nursing, and she's going to go through the overview.
Good evening. I'm just going to go over an overview of our COVID data for last year and where we are this year. I do have, from the slides that are on here, there are a few updates for today, which the numbers didn't change much, but I'm going to look at my notes to give you those updates. So when we look at our totals for the 2021 school year, in the state of Texas, we had 5,607 confirmed COVID cases for students in the age 0 to 19. The Texas website classifies the children as 0 to 19. The CDC and the CDC classifies them from 0 to 17. And Tarrant County Public Health classifies them as under 15 and then 15 to 24. So it is a little confusing to compare the data. But of those 5,607 in Texas, we had 59 fatalities. That's a fatality rate of 1%, which is a little higher than what the CDC lists for the United States as 0.07% fatality rate. Our fatality rate for all in Tarrant County is 1.3%. The cumulative positive public school student cases for the 2021 year, these were students on campus reported to DSHS by the school districts, were 148,197, and that's a positivity rate of 4.9%. The cumulative rate for public school staff was 73,741 cases for a rate of 9.2%. And then when you compare our campus cases to that, we had 1,263 positive on-campus cases for 5.7%, and cumulative positive staff on-campus cases were 443 for 14.7%. The purpose of this slide is just to show the trends in the state of Texas. So it's a little bit hard to see, but on that top line, it shows confirmed cases in the state of Texas. And so I'm using the dates on this to compare 2020 to 2021 of August 10th, because that's the latest date I have for the fatalities listed on here. So if we go back to 8/10/2020, we had 8,913 cases positive in the state of Texas. And if we look at 8/10/21, we have 13,935. So you can see that the cases are increasing. But if you look at the bottom row for fatalities, we can see that on 8/10/21, we had 193 deaths, and on 8/10/21, we had 34. So although we are seeing an increase in cases, we are seeing a decrease in fatalities. Our totals right now for Tarrant County, as everybody is aware, pediatric ICU beds are occupied at 100%. Tarrant County Public Health website does show on their additional metrics that the hospitalizations for COVID-19 for children ages 0 to 15 is 2%. They do list the hospitalizations for those age 15 to 24 as 3%. The COVID cases in children ages 0 to 15, this is cumulative over time, has been 12%, and that is from the Tarrant County Public Health case characteristics. The positivity rate is currently 22% in Tarrant County. Well, it's actually, as of today, 22.67%, so that did bump up a little bit, and that comes from the Tarrant County Public Health key metrics, which we'll look at in just a minute. The community spread level remains high. High is based on the CDC metrics of low, moderate, substantial, and high. And the definition of a high community spread level is you have greater than 100 cases per 100,000 residents and greater than a 10% positivity rate. On this slide, again, we're just looking at trends. So these are the trends for Tarrant County. And because that's a little bit hard to see, I'm again going to go back to August 10th, 2020 and look at August 10th, 2021. So cases on August 10th, 2020 in Tarrant County were 490, and on August 10th, 2021, they're up to 963. So we can see that's almost a doubling of cases. The death rate did go down from 8 on August 10th, 2020 to 3 on August 10th, 2021. And that was updated as of today. They did update the actual percentage of the death rate, and it is still at 1.3%. This slide shows the key metrics for Tarrant County, which this is from the update on Friday the 13th. They updated again late today. They didn't have it updated this morning, but as I said, the positivity rate has gone up to 22.67%. There hasn't been much change in the COVID-like illness and influenza-like illness rates. The ERs are seeing a lot more visits for COVID-like illness than influenza. Then the beds occupied in TSA, that's Trauma Service Area E, which is where we fall, have gone up to 17% as of today. And then the percentage of occupied beds have gone up to 23%. This shows a rate of 239 per 100,000 residents, and as of today, that's gone up to 255. So we are trending upwards. When we look at the projections, they are projecting for this week in Tarrant County anywhere from 900 to 1,100 new cases per day. Our COVID totals for HEBISD as of last week, the first week of school, we had a total on-campus positive cases, 14 staff. That actually includes 2 non-campus staff, but that's our total numbers, and then 28 students. And then divided up by elementary, secondary, we had 6 staff at each, 13 and 15 students, and then the 2 non-campus staff members. We did have reports of 69 students who tested positive who had not yet registered or attended school. Do you need me to go back to anything, or?
So,
yes, sir.
Forgive me, I have a question. Just for comparison data, do we have a snapshot on what that was like last year, specifically to slide 8, this right here? No, back forward one, that one right here.
I did not bring that. I can certainly get that to you. I can tell you it was definitely much less.
Okay.
I have a few questions, Joy, please. So the total, the week of 8/9 to 8/13, the 14 staff and 28 students, that's the report that we got this afternoon. Is that correct? So there's not one campus. It's fairly well spread out, right? Distributed. It's not one campus that those numbers are coming from. It's 2
I
here,
believe
2
we
here.
sent, school-wide positive case letters to 17 campuses. So we had some campuses that reported no cases, and we had some that reported more than one.
But no more than 3 on any campus, is that correct? Oh, 3, let's see, 3 staff or 3 students. Bell, let's see, one campus had 5 maybe. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that's the report we're looking at. I have one more question on the hospital beds that are taken. So if 2%, these are where the numbers have gotten very jumbled for me personally. Hospitalizations for COVID-19 for children 0 to 15 are 2%. So what else is causing kids to have to go to and be admitted into a hospital?
And that was a current number from today, but that didn't change from what they had been posting before. So I'm not sure if that data is lagging behind. It lists it as being updated today on the website, but we received an alert that there's a huge increase in RSV cases, and so those cases are also taking up hospital beds and ICU beds.
I saw that on the news today that some of the children are positive for both COVID and RSV, and some are just positive for one or the other.
And there are other respiratory viruses that are being hospitalized as well.
So they're mostly respiratory, but not, so RSV or respiratory or COVID.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
This registered and non-attenders, 69 students. So you said they're not registered and not attending,
Okay.
but I read this as registered but not attending yet due to this.
Yes, PEMS would actually have to explain how they're handling those students, so I don't know how to explain it. So these are kids who reported to us that they were positive, but they have not yet
shown up,
been on campus because
they're positive.
Yeah.
And normally after 3 days, we would withdraw, but because we have noticed that they're intending on coming back, but ill, so they're not being withdrawn.
Right, and this also does not account, these have to be self-reported by the parents.
Yes.
And so there could be a small factor out there of non-reporters.
Yes, that's if they have, yes. All right, let me go through the virtual option rationale, some of the information that we're looking at. So let me start with the beginning of the school year data. So the district projections this year, we projected 22,952 students. So far in person, we have had 22,472 students have shown up at school. That puts us 480 students below projection. That puts us in position that we would expect to easily make projection at that point, being 480 down at this point. The elementary projection, K6, 11,785. The students in the grades K6 that have shown up, 11,491, so 294, a little more than the entire group, but not far off, but definitely a few more. And then we have had 27 withdrawals, students who have shown up to school, but since Wednesday have withdrawn, so that's 27 students. So on the temporary virtual classroom option rationale, we look at what are the current situation we're looking at. We see COVID-19 statistics on the rise, as Joy has pointed out. We have no vaccine available for students under the age of 12. We look at this right now as the only legal option available to school districts. And we want to find a way to engage the students who have not yet attended. So students who have not come to school, or even those 27 students that have withdrawn, we want to make sure that we have an option to keep them with HEB. Now, one of the pieces that we definitely look at, and we want everyone to look at when considering this option, is the profile of a successful virtual learner. You know, while some students do thrive online, it is not the best fit for every student. And as we go through this list, you know, a successful online learner should have demonstrated success in an online environment, attend and engage learning every day, have a parent or guardian who can serve as their learning coach and monitor progress. The student needs to be very comfortable using digital resources and the district's learning management system, be comfortable communicating and interacting with peers and teachers, be proactive and resourceful in their learning, and exhibit effective social emotional coping strategies and mental wellness. We think these criteria are extremely important. Most online schools start at 5th grade. This criteria become even more important if we're looking at an option that goes K-6. Again, there's a reason most of those schools start at 5th grade. If we're going to take younger students, we need everyone to be on board and understanding the commitment and the criteria that need to be in place for that to be successful. So, temporary virtual classroom options, some of the conditions that we've put upon it. No simultaneous teaching. No teacher will be asked to teach in both platforms. The teachers that are teaching the online will only be teaching the online classes. Core subjects only for grades K-6. There will be no schools of choice, no school activities. This would be a one-time opportunity to enroll, and then once a parent makes a commitment, this will run through, so there is a finite date, this will run through October 29th. So it runs through the second 6 weeks. Some of the other school districts, you might see a lot of people are saying 9 weeks, 9 weeks. It's because they're on 9-week grading periods. We are not. We are on 6 weeks grading periods, and we also will not be able to start before September 7th. Any opportunity to start before September 7th would create chaos for both teachers and students. We need time to select teachers, we need time to train, we need time to get them enrolled. And if we do anything any quicker, we will not be ready. So virtual option funding. The legislature has not authorized funding for a virtual learning option. We have Senate Bill 15 and House Bill 30 that both could be considered in a special session, but we do not have any information on that. Anticipated cost of, and the cost is lost ADA, and it is $49 per student per day is what we would lose in ADA. Now, funding options, sources that we could use for funding. We do have the ESSER grant. We have allocated a lot of our year 1 ESSER grant already. Year 1 and 2 can be used simultaneously, so we could look into the ESSER grant to see if we can find a source of funding for this, which we will be able to find some, and then any additional funds would have to come from fund balance. So, temporary virtual classroom option, proposed timeline. We share the information tonight. We can share information tomorrow, potentially with families. We would begin enrollment. Now, understand that we have to begin enrollment for the timetable to get started. Board approval will then send it forward. So we'd have to ask people to, if this is approved, would you enroll? And we'll take those, because without firm numbers, we don't know what we're building. We have to get firm numbers so we know the numbers, the grades, and we can start building that program. And then again, classes would start after Labor Day on the 7th. Communication timeline, very similar. We will get information out tomorrow, hopefully by noon, if not earlier. And then anticipated board approval, if the board does approve that, would be next week on the 23rd, and then we can share that announcement that the program was approved, and again, classes could start on the day after Labor Day, September 7th.
Dr. Harrington, also.
Yep.
Would you also speak to the board about the need for doing the enrollment, because that is also going to be able to give us a guesstimate on, a much better
yes.
guesstimate or estimate on what the cost is going to be to the school district? Because right now, without having any of those enrollment numbers, we don't have that information.
I mean, we have the formula, but I can't give you a cost estimate until I have those enrollment numbers. And once I have those enrollment numbers, that way you also have that number to you prior to having to make a vote. But we just do not know.
So the communication, so the thought process here is that, if we thought about moving forward at this point, we're not committing to anything. We're just moving forward with further study and with communication to gather numbers, right? And that communication would say something along the lines of, this is not 100% yet. We're just gathering numbers.
Yes, and we're working on, I've got some potential that we do want you to take a look at, some potential communication, some of the information. But again, it is potential, and what we'll make very clear, it's pending board approval. So nothing would happen without board approval. But
Yeah.
Can I make a comment about that? Because I think this is a very important question that Ms. Cole is asking. Because what we need to do is, this will not just be a survey, but this would actually be a registration process. So it would be communicated to the parents. The board is considering a virtual learning option. This is your registration period to register for virtual learning. That opportunity will only last throughout the week. And then, we will share that information with the board and a final decision will be made. And the reason we chose to do that rather than a survey is because we want to know what level of commitment there might truly be for moving into a virtual learning option. And I think we all know we all receive lots of surveys. Those surveys often go unanswered, or we say, okay, well, I'll go ahead and fill that out positively just in case. Now, we know that could happen with registration, but we think it's a lot more definitive if we're sending out this as registration rather than just a general survey.
When would the registration end?
A lot of districts have done a 48-hour period. So, we can do 48 hours, 72. I think we'll just have to make that decision also on if we get the information out tomorrow, is it due Thursday, is it due Friday? We just need that data as soon as possible so that we can begin that process of determining we can calculate cost, but we can also begin, what does this look like?
And my thoughts are we would probably run it through Friday at 4 p.m. We do need to
Parents
we
have
need to
already
give our parents
decided
some,
whether they would or not, so.
we just need to give them some time to get the registration information completed. And I do want to give at least as much time as we possibly can for parents to be able to thoughtfully consider that.
So I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to start backwards. So I'm doing the math here, and hypothetically, we're opening this up to all parents. So hypothetically, you could get 5,000 parents interested in this. Times 49 is 245,000 a week, or roughly, we're looking at upwards of maybe $14 million, hypothetically, should that many parents be interested for 12 weeks. Walk me backwards on where that comes from.
Yeah, good question.
Because I realize this is state not funded. So this is something we would have to do to offer virtual.
So let me ask a clarifying question, walk you back what's coming from the $49?
No. Where does the 14.7 come should 5,000 parents do this for 12 weeks? How does that affect our budget?
Well, that would have to be taken from the fund balance. As Dr. Harrington indicated, we could use some of our ESSER funds for that, but those are really our two funding sources that we would have to consider as a district. You would have to consider as a board for funding that option.
So just to be clear, if we dipped into ESSER, a lot of the ESSER 1 has been spent. So it would be ESSER 2. So that would be next year's ESSER funding that we would no longer have flexibility to use. And fund balance would take away from other projects and other things that we've earmarked for future use as well. Is that correct?
That is correct. And ESSER, just for the terminology, it's all the ESSER 3 grant we used year one of the ESSER 3 grant.
Yeah,
We-
sorry.
So it's about $10 million a year. But those were planned on being, many were planned on being recurring. So that would also, heavy use of ESSER would dramatically change the interventions that were put in place when we talked about the instructional improvement plan.
And then we'd have to look at other funding sources to try to backfill those instructional needs that will occur in year 2 and 3. So, when we talk specifically about fund balance, just a reminder, you have locally defined capital projects fund. That's one fund balance source, as well as the general fund balance. We have some other options with some Medicaid payments that we receive, which is probably about 1.5 million. So there are several different sources that we would be looking at and trying to consolidate those, if the board approved for us to move forward with virtual learning. But one of the things that is important to note is it is a costly endeavor, and as you move forward, it's looking at the sustainability of that. So we do want to be very honest and very upfront about that as we present this information to the board.
So Steve, you segue perfectly into my next couple of questions. Sticking with the funding issue, what happens 12 weeks from now if the situation is worse and the state continues to not fund us? Will we just continue to go into fund balance to make this happen?
That would have to be a decision that this board would make at that time, and what we would have to do would be some cost predictive models to show you what the impact would be if you were to continue this beyond that period. That's why you see, because there is no state funding currently for virtual learning, that's why you see the school districts all around us have set a finite date, most of whom have set 9 weeks, or some have set 12 weeks, those grading periods, because we all understand that trying to sustain this over the long haul may or may not be something that we can do.
So that brings me to my third question about this. We think we have a snapshot of today. There's 3 possibilities of the future 12 weeks from now. It's the same, it's better, or it's worse. We have this much money to make this happen. Answer for me, why today?
Well, I can answer that, and then I'll let Dr. Harrington answer as well. Right now, we have very few options that are legally available to us. We know that there may be additional protocol options that are available to us in the future as all of these legalities play out across the state. So right now, this is the only legal option that is available to us. So that's one reason. And then the other reasons that were articulated on the screen, additionally, there are no vaccines that are available for those students who are under the age of 12. So that's another consideration in the future that may become available to our students, but it's not something that is currently available to them at this time.
Okay, so then
Do
let
you
me
wanna
go
add
now
anything?
to my second questions. Let's pull off funding a second. Clarify for me, forgive me, I'm the simpleton on the board here. Who is doing the teaching? We are not using teachers, so we're going to leave them alone. And we're going to use who, Dr. Harrington?
Well, we're going to try to limit the disruptions to the face-to-face learning. So we have looked at the possibility of instructional specialists. We've looked at the possibility of using some of the COVID interventionists. We definitely have talked to Darla Clark, our assistant superintendent. She's like, depending on the numbers and where these students come from, we can consolidate some classes if those numbers go in. And then, because a classroom teacher would be our best option, but at the same time, we can't disrupt the school and disrupt the programs that we have in place, because then we're not going to get it done at either location. So we're looking for we're going to look at the numbers, look at where kids have signed up. We're going to dig deep into this, right down to the classroom level, every grade level, and we're going to try and create the least disruption to the campuses.
Okay, so again, we've had some pre-talk about this, and I just want to bring it up in an open forum to my fellow board members. I agree completely. We should have as low impact of disruption as possible. I also think that if we offer virtual, we want to encourage as many to be in person as possible. I realize that we cannot currently deal with the mask issue. Is it even humanly possible as a snapshot, if we were going to do disruption, to possibly create for these parents an option only on the day one, because we can't sustain it and teachers can't enforce it, a possibility of a masked classroom and a non-masked classroom? And I realize that this is not sustainable, maybe in PE, art, or something or other, but if we're going to have some form of disruption anyway, is that even a possibility under the wire of what we're allowed to do as school board members?
The struggle that when we've heard those comments is we don't know the numbers. So the masked classroom and the unmasked, what if the numbers are not even remotely in line? I mean, we take the scenario of everything is 30 kids and 15 and 15, but what do we do when it's 2 and 13? And then what do we do when the student in the mask class doesn't want to wear his mask, and we have a mask mandate that says we can't tell them to wear their mask?
And I'm not advocating that we make teachers enforcers at all, nor am I advocating that this would be a moving target. But I would advocate it would provide an option for students to possibly be enrolled and not virtual. I realize this is a total different paradigm, and but it's a thought coming from the simpleton on the board here, just a thought.
Yeah, I think Dr. Harrington's point is well taken. It's really in the scheduling and looking at the request of the students, because it does not always just fall evenly. And what we don't want is a class where we have 35 students with one teacher and a class where we have 8 kids with one teacher, because that's certainly not optimal learning really for either group. We also don't want situations where we have to start transferring kids across the district because we don't have any additional mask seats available at elementary X. So if they want a mask, we've got to transfer them to elementary, Z. So we had initial conversations about that, but really trying to work through the logistics of that and trying to not impact everyone on the entire campus. That's where those conversations became difficult or bogged down for us.
Dr. Harrington, I think there's a little bit of confusion on where the cost comes from as far as the $49 a day. I think it may clear up some confusion here if you could speak to that. I mean, if the students choose to go virtually, TEA then does not recognize them as an enrolled student in HEB.
Right.
And therefore, we don't get the money that we would get allotted for that individual student?
We get no ADA for those students. So we would get a very, very small amount of funding. John Hollis would help me as a non-member, but we're talking a minuscule amount of funding that would go with them. We get no ADA, which is the vast bulk of the funding.
Yeah, we wouldn't receive our foundation school program funds. And I think, and correct me, and David is here, our deputy, and Dobie, both of our deputy superintendents for business operations. But I believe when we say we might draw some funding, it's really limited to if those students actually are eligible for additional weight.
Yes.
So if they're not eligible for additional weights, like they're not a career and tech student, they're not a bilingual student, GT, then we would draw no funding on them. So it would only be on that limited number that we would receive any funding. And the commissioner has been clear that that is the only thing at this time that he will fund.
Dr. Harrington, can you speak to the significance of Snapshot Day, and does that fall within this 12-week window?
It would.
Can you talk to that?
Well,
explain Snapshot Day and the importance of it.
I'm going to have to do a little more research, actually.
So one of the most important things about Snapshot Day, it is the day that the state takes that picture for accountability purposes. That really is the major issue with Snapshot Day. So that once they take that picture, that's when we become accountable from the state accountability system for those students in terms of their performance on STAR assessments, EOC assessments.
It doesn't have much to do with funding.
No.
Now I think they would probably be counted then. You're still just not drawing ADA, as long as they are still in.
They'd be counted in the snapshot for the accountability, but not the funding.
Yeah.
But if they're not successful virtually, that still affects us, negatively affects us.
So if they're still enrolled in virtual, do they show up in our PEMS as being absent every day, or how does that work?
The PEMS is going to mark, I think they're is it non-member?
Yeah, I can't quote me on the exact coding, but there's a special coding.
There's a special code
Again,
for
John
that.
Hollis is our specialist with respect to this, but there is a special code that's set aside for a student that's enrolled but not attending. And so, therefore, not allowing
Okay.
us to generate ADA for.
And just where would we ever use that? Occasionally, we'll have a student who is possibly enrolled in one class, a senior, who may be finishing up one class. We may not be drawing ADA on them because they're not a half-time or full-time student.
Okay.
Just a few more questions, and I'll cede the floor for additional questions from the board. But we've talked about the loss in funding. Have we discussed what the actual costs, if any, are going to be on top of that? Do we anticipate having to go out and hire anybody for this?
At this time, we do not, but we actually do have allocated positions that are still not been filled. And so it would not, at this point, we do not anticipate hiring beyond what is already authorized in the budget. We're already, and the districts across North Texas are already facing a teacher shortage, so we also don't believe that there's many hiring options out there. But, you know, we looked at a couple other options that would have incurred some costs, but we moved out, away from those. So I can't see a lot. There could be some printing. We may have to create some manipulatives that we send home that we may not normally. But I don't see, do you have?
Oh, no, and the other side of it is we would see reductions in cost as well because you wouldn't be transporting students, so costs would go down in our transportation. And then just field trips, those kinds of things. You'll see some attrition in cost as a result of less students in person as well.
Yeah,
So
and we
that
do
c-
have
that
the
kind of
technology.
balances out.
We have the technology purchase made already. You know, that was one of our big costs when we had to move to virtual last year because we were not a one-to-one district. We've made that purchase. We do have the technology available, so that would not be an additional cost for us to bear as it was last year.
And if we're only focusing on the core subjects, can you walk us through what a virtual day may look like? How much time is the student? Is it every day? Is it a morning? Is it an afternoon? Is it a full day? Have we gotten there yet?
Dr. Norgard has some pieces that we did put together.
The answer is we don't know for certain yet because a lot of it it's this very cyclical thinking here until we know the numbers, how we're distributing teachers and units. But much like when we went through our attestation last year and we were looking at, we know the instructional minutes for each subject area of our traditional students and mirroring that, because these are our students, they will come back. So we do need to mirror the instructional minutes of our traditional students. But does all of that mean that a student is directly synchronously interacting during that whole time? No, because we're going to need to provide for our closing the gaps, those intervention times when some of the students are working asynchronously and the teachers in a breakout room with just a couple doing that small work. We're also going to need to allow in this day during some of the students' asynchronous time additional training and support for the staff that is delivering this instruction. How can we support them more as we move forward with virtual instruction? What other pieces can we give them? And how does that build into their day? But the overall instructional time of synchronous and asynchronous that students would be expected to spend would match the minutes that we have in our traditional.
Okay. And if we're talking about using interventionalists to staff these classes, would they then be full-time virtual teachers, or are they being full-time virtual teachers as well as doing their interventionalist job?
That would become their assignment. This is why it also depends on the numbers and how we assign them. But yes, those that move to virtual will be virtual teachers. You know, we have the guidance that they can't do both simultaneously. But part of it may be intervention, but they also may not be with the same group all day. Just like we have departmentalized teachers in the classroom, you know, by third grade, I'm going to teach the math and science. You know, Ms. Cole might teach the English and social studies, and we switch students. we're going to have to look, again, based on our numbers of how many teachers at each grade level and in what specialties. And maybe I'm a 3rd and a 4th grade teacher, but I'm just teaching math. And then I'm going to do some math small groups, while a different teacher might be teaching just 3rd grade ELA, because we do more minutes in ELA at certain grades. So we have to look at how all of that comes together with the available staff and their expertise.
Okay, I think I'm following you, but I want to make sure I am. 'Cause you said they're not going to be asked to do virtual and in person. But if I am a English language arts elementary interventionalist, and that's my job today, and I'm asked to teach virtual, whatever it is, is that same person continuing to do in-person interventionalist, or who is taking that job over?
Well, that's the.
So that and that
We
and that's
cannot,
what,
we will not be able to execute the instructional improvement plan as we presented it last week. We would need to, what happens on virtual, we will need to look again at what does that instructional improvement plan look like for our in-person students, because we don't have more people.
No, I think therein lies the problem.
Yeah, agreed.
I'll cede my time and come back, circle back.
So, forgive me, I have a few more questions. So just walk me through this. I'm a Suzuki string parent and I pick this. I am out of Suzuki strings during the 12 weeks because I am only getting core virtual information, right?
Right.
Correct.
Same, I'm a Spanish immersion parent. I am out of this for 12 weeks while I'm being taught by a separate individual during the virtual. Do I come back into Suzuki or into Spanish immersion when I'm done?
We think Spanish immersion will be very difficult to return to. Now, Suzuki, there's probably a much stronger possibility. We're going to have to look at what is the reality of returning. And I think that's the reality. And we're going to be trying to be real honest when we send this information out to parents, is especially with some campuses that are near capacity and they're already on the verge of overflow, which means that they have hit capacity and the students who live in that zone cannot attend that school. Well, we'll have students who choose to stay and they will take those spots, and when some students return, they will no longer be able to attend that home campus because that campus is at capacity and they could end up in overflow situations. So we're going to have to look at what were the ramifications of this staffing and what is the availability and where are these students. If the students are too far behind in Spanish immersion, they will not be able to return. Now, Suzuki is very independent, and so that's a possibility that they could. The other schools of choice, whether theater or computer science, they may or may not be able to return to those campuses, and especially if they're not home campus students. And that's, we want everyone to understand that if they choose this option, that is a reality. We're going to make every effort to accommodate our kids, but I just don't want someone going into it not looking at that possibility, because it's a possibility.
Will those scenarios be, not maybe explained in detail, but given as examples as part of the enrollment process?
Yeah, we've tried to write out that information and we have a number. Nielsen is working on a question, FAQ section also. So we can, when we get ready to send this out, we hope to have a narrative that goes out with the link plus the link to the FAQ.
Okay, I have some questions too. So kids that were unsuccessful last year and barely maybe passed or did not meet their STAR standards, and their parent now chooses this option. If they weren't successful last time, I'm going to assume there's a possibility they won't be successful this time. Gotta word this. I just think parents need to be aware that, so are those individual conversations, or we just let the parents enroll, that is their decision, we do not intervene or give any direction that maybe that's not best for their kids, or?
At this time, we've given, we're going to give the information, we're going to highlight the profile of a successful learner, and the very first one is have demonstrated success in an online learning environment.
Okay. And let me tell you why I'm asking that question. I love teachers. Teachers who know me know I love them. I do not want to see teachers, we have got to alleviate the pressure, or we're just not going to have teachers. I received over 50 messages this weekend from teachers in our district. Very kind, very encouraging. None of them necessarily gave me their opinion. They just wanted to say, we're praying for you. You know, please just know that we're teaching in HEB because we want to be in HEB. I don't want any layers or complications to hit the teacher classrooms that are not absolutely unavoidable. I worry. This is my main issue with going to a virtual option temporarily. If even half of the kids that enroll in virtual come back and have not been successful, they go back into a classroom where in-person kids have been more successful. We have now put pressure on teachers, and to me, in my mind, it's almost the same thing as going back to hybrid teaching because they've got 2/3 of their class that are caught up and 1/3 of their class that are still behind. Do we then, maybe the interventionists that we pulled to virtual teach, then those interventionists, it would fall on them, correct, to go back and try to correct the...
At which time we would return to our original plan of using those interventionists within those classrooms. But again, to your point, there may be additional gaps.
Do we have enough interventionists to do that?
What do you, enough interventionists?
Enough interventionists, we're not fully.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're still not fully staffed this year with our additional ESSER positions. There's just the availability of staff this year across the North Texas area, and I'm sure it's beyond our area. Everyone is reporting that they're not fully staffed.
And the kids are already so far behind that just catching up with the current behind, if we add additional behind to that.
Mm-hmm. I just think that the classroom teachers, in my mind, and I'm not saying I'm for, or I'm not indicating any vote at this point. I'm just trying to process all of this. My main goal, and this is what I told every teacher who sent me a message, I want kids learning and I want teachers teaching. And we need to start getting out of the way and let teachers teach. We have got to start letting teachers do their job, and we have got to take as many complications out of their classroom as we can. Because otherwise, these kids will never be caught up. And the thought of losing any more really good teachers anywhere, we can't do that. Because then next year just layers on last year, and the year after that layers on this year. And all we're doing is kicking the ball, kicking the ball, kicking the ball. At some point, we have to name an end game and say, at some point, we have got to get back to letting teachers teach. That's my goal. That's my opinion. So I am, for the record, I will say this. The schools of choice and the Spanish immersion, I know this is going to be really hard for parents who have those kids in those programs because they are competitive to get into. We can't put those kids back in those schools of choice program. I don't like that. I think that piece that those parents are going to have to choose, as hard as that is. I've had a kid in Spanish immersion that I've had to make that choice, and it's difficult, but I just don't think we can keep those kids in those programs.
Go again. Josie, you've talked to parents who have asked for a virtual option. I know we've been sending them some information on other online schools that they could enroll in today and not wait 3 weeks for us to get it going. Can you share with us some of those options?
The options that we had sent out were the TXVSN, the Texas Virtual Schools Network. And then I believe they were no longer accepting applications at this point. And the other large one is K-12. K-12 is the largest provider of online learning. So,
are they accepting students
honestly,
right now?
I do not know at this point. The last time I checked, they still were, but I have not looked at it since the end of last week.
Right.
Last week, their website said they still were accepting. I do not know as of today.
And TXVSN is only for 3rd through 12th grade,
Oh,
correct?
yes, that is correct also.
Are there other school districts in the state that have an online option that HEBISD students could enroll in? I've heard rumblings that you can do that in Austin, but I haven't been able to confirm that.
Yes, we've heard that statement also, and I have to be honest, it doesn't make any sense, and I don't know. They have said that they would take other students.
I don't understand the logic behind it, but I've read an article that they're accepting like 400 kids from outside of Austin ISD, so
Are they a
it's going to be extremely
TXVSN
competitive. I think
provider?
it's maxed out at 400
I
kids.
don't know, that's a possibility. And Steve just mentioned, they possibly could be TXVSN, and that's why they're able. They could be a provider. The other, like, could our students go anywhere else? It's Grapevine Colleyville has always had, or for many years, their program, but that, again, that's grade 5 and up, their iUniversity prep option. And then there's the K-12 Hallsville, and then the other K-12, which is actually out of Houston, but there's local affiliates everywhere.
I think Grapevine is full.
Okay. They usually are.
Yeah. We to an extent, we had this discussion back in May 24th, when we talked about, online only considerations and not doing it. Part of the reason was funding, and part of the reason was we didn't think it provided a good education for the vast majority of our students. But we also said if we were going to do it, it would need a full year commitment. And right now, we're committing 12 weeks. And so, I have serious concerns about being able to provide a quality education for only 12 weeks that we're going to get together in the next 3 weeks, led by, I'm sure, very capable employees, but not in the job that they were hired to do. The impact on those students coming back into the classroom after 12 weeks, when you look at the projections, the COVID projections, and just where we were last year as far as cases rising through the fall into winter, there is not going to be, in my mind, a brighter picture in 12 weeks than we have right now. And the call to continue this is going to be immense, because once we start it, and people say, well, you started it when the numbers were here, and now the numbers are here, and you're going to tell everybody to come back, there's going to be great pressure to continue this. And there's going to be great pressure to continue this maybe, on down the line forever. It's just an option that we offer. And until the legislature funds it, we are going to run out of money to do it. I've got great concerns about that.
When does the money run out? Joe, when does the money run out? I mean, we do it for 12 weeks, and it's 15 million, another 12 weeks is 15 million. How long can we go? And good question, isn't it?
It's probably a David
Account-
question.
I mean,
Come on, David.
David, that's what we need to know.
Not the pile of money.
If we don't have the money, we can't do it.
That's it. You'll run out inside a year. I mean.
And then if we continue, we'd have to RIF
You'll be
teachers, which
beyond-
means
below your board goal of 4 months of operating fund balance, that's for sure. And so then, but you will continue. Now, there's other, that's just in the general fund. You've got some additional resources in the locally defined. So that could potentially get you through the year. But if you continue, just 14.
Does that include our 4 month of,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
we
but
would lose that?
Yeah.
It's a huge matter of scope, though, because that's based off 5,000 kids. If
Yeah,
we have
and
500
it all-
kids show up, then it's 1.5 million.
Right.
Yeah. So it's hard to know without knowing, and we don't have the data right
But
now.
I think the parents
know.
may need to know how long this is going to last to start with.
Well, 12 weeks.
12 weeks.
It's going to be 12 weeks, but, are we just going to say 12 weeks and it's over?
Well,
That's a good
don't know.
question.
So,
I think Ms. Cole had a good point earlier, though. We've got money earmarked for projects, and we can't start taking away from other things that are in our strategic plan or facilities that need to be fixed. I mean, there's a big scope of things that we have that money earmarked for. And we can't weigh one against the other without numbers, but
Yeah, the other challenge is ultimately, could this throw you into recapture as well? Because then you've got kids that, with property values of 17.5 billion that aren't being counted in our WAT accounts anymore. So that could potentially also throw you into a recapture calculation. So that's something else that you have to consider. Well, Finance 101 is the property wealth equalization process that you have in Texas. We're considered a property wealthy school district, but we're in a gap between having to pay and not having to pay recapture. And as we lose students, that could throw you closer into the possibility of having to pay recapture. And when you say lose students, they're not actually leaving the district, but they're not counted on our ADA and our WAT accounts, and so weighted average daily attendance. And so that could potentially throw you into recapture and cost you even more money beyond that.
So in short, recapture is we're no longer receiving any money from the state, but some of our local property
Because
taxes are being
we will
sent to the
now
state.
be receiving, be collecting more taxes than we can generate in ADA. Yeah.
I have just one more question, and this kind of goes back to how kids would choose. So I got this question from a Viridian parent today, and it was something I hadn't thought about. If we do not offer a virtual option and a child is sick or quarantined, let me think how he put it. If no virtual is offered and they miss school, how is it made up? Is it excused and made up on Canvas, or if a parent, so that was one of the questions. The other one is if a parent chooses to keep their kid at home, not sick, not quarantined, but they choose to keep them home, how does that work get made up?
Unenrolled.
That would be unexcused, but if the parent said the student was sick, then that would be an excused absence with a note saying the student was sick. I mean, and again, we follow our normal truancy process where after so many days, we then do require a doctor's note.
But if a student is out, they're not going to jump onto the virtual program because that's already been closed.
Yeah, we would not use the virtual program for that regardless. Right now, if a student is out, the best way to get that student their work, like I said, the old days, we call for a packet and the parent to come pick it up. Nowadays, the packet is Canvas.
Right.
And there's work loaded into Canvas, and the student can do the work that way. Okay. There's another option out there, remote conferencing, but as we've run the numbers, we can't find a successful way to do it. Again, this remote conferencing is just for kids that are out for a few days that are sick, COVID, et cetera. But we're still investigating this remote conferencing. But again, at this time, we don't see a financially viable way to use it.
So I have one final suggestion, and as I make the suggestion, I'm in no means endorsing this, but as a thought, it was mentioned by Brody that we may want to prioritize certain individuals to be in virtual. Would we, I guess I'm asking you personally, would we consider that option, maybe an option of a stopgate of so many students as a second option, and the third option that we offer to all parents?
You mean just like health compromised?
Correct.
Students or families?
And I'm talking this out loud, as I realize that we're going off a cliff, and I absolutely want to offer this to every student. I would not be doing due diligence to my taxpayers if we didn't have other options, I think, to consider this enormous cost that we are looking at as just a possibility. I'm not advocating that we would do one or the other. I'm just thinking out loud.
I think it would be the evaluation of those. I mean, I'd have to sit down probably with Joy and talk through, but that's, I think, the difficult piece there.
Yeah, and that would have to be a decision that, the board would make, is that we are only going to serve those immune-compromised students at this time. And then, as Joe said, then we would have to have some type of way to vet those students, whether that is a doctor's note, what it is that we have to verify that that student is, immune compromised, if I'm understanding correctly what you're asking.
Right, okay, so I'm going to retract it and say, maybe it's a discussion we have after we do our enrollment at our next meeting.
I just don't know how you can vet that out properly, because it's one thing if the student is compromised. It's a whole nother thing if someone else in the family is compromised. And then I don't know if we run into HIPAA violation problems. I don't know.
Right.
We're talking about a time frame of a couple of weeks.
Sure.
And logistically, to get all of that information seems really difficult.
We would have to change the start date.
So let me backpedal a little bit. It's something to consider if we have 6,000 students interested in this and we're after our enrollment numbers, or some absorbent number that's interested, we may want to readdress this conversation.
All right, Dr. Harrington, I know that I've read that another school district close to us is planning on offering a virtual program, but only if SB 15 passes. I don't know if we've had the chance to do any research as to what that, and that's the Senate bill that I think just got through committee. Of course, we know that we're in a special session and nothing's getting done right now. But have we had a chance to look at that bill to see if we can, if we went ahead with this program, that we could mark all the boxes that that bill may require if they were to say retroactively, we will fund virtual programs?
And that's what we have been looking at. We're going to start with a program that is core only, but it is a program that can easily meet all requirements, meaning we will add the PE, fine arts, health, or different requirements that would be necessary. So we're going to start with just the core, but we do anticipate that if the Senate Bill 15 or House Bill 30 pass, that there will be additional criteria that we'll have to meet. But from reviewing of the bills, that's what we wanted to make sure, that we build a program that easily would convert to a program that meets those requirements. And one of the tenets that has been in those bills has been no simultaneous teaching, and the commissioner has doubled down on that. He's like, absolutely, no simultaneous teaching.
Yeah, so I know when we got into this last year, we had to do attestations and exactly say what the board wanted to do and what we were approving. So I don't know if all that would be part of this process, that we should be, I don't know, I just want to cover our bases just in case. And I have no idea what the, what will happen with the legislature, but.
I could tell you.
Yeah. Well, and the commissioner will come out with that, but we have last year's attestation. As a matter of fact, that's what Holly was working on, the documents that we had created last year to adjust some of those for this. The rules would be different for this based on the law, the bills that are currently in place. But again, we do feel that if we did put something out, we have to put something out that would quickly meet all requirements. We do not want to have to start over, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think, to quote Mr. Chapman, hope is not a plan. Right. We cannot put any hope or any faith that the legislature is going to figure this out. We have kids to educate, and we need to start right now to do that. We cannot wait for them. We can't.
Yeah.
So contact your legislatures.
All right, well, do you have more questions, Chris?
I have no more questions.
All right. Well, that was a great discussion. Again, we're kind of in a position of considering something that we don't know the full scope of. We don't know, if we open this up for some sort of enrollment, we don't know if it'd be, 5,500 or 5,000 people who would sign up. So it's really hard to make decisions based off of such a lack of information, but I thank the administration and Dr. Harrington and Joy for, putting so much time into creating this, and everybody who helped. But at this time, we need to discuss what type of action we might want to take as a board, or what type of motion would be acceptable to the board to bring forward.
So let me just kind of talk this through a little bit. I see that we have three options in front of us. We can either, decide we want to move forward with virtual for K through 6 and tell the administration to get to work. We can decide we want to continue to study this and think about it and have them do additional work, gather some numbers for us, and then vote at a later date. Or as a board, we can decide this is not something we're interested in at all. Does anybody see any other option than those three?
I think that's fair, and I think that, we spent most of last meeting talking about our instructional improvement plan. We have everything in place for this coming up year to try to bridge the gap of what's happened over the last 18 months. And if we had, full numbers for our teachers, where we didn't have long-term subs holding positions right now, and we thought we could go out and hire some additional teachers and dedicate them online, that may be one thing, but that's not the framework within which this is being presented to us. And I think if we start taking interventionalists that are very specific in the orders that we've given them this year on what we want them to do and pull them away from the students that most need it and put them online in a position that they're not, I don't know if they've even been approached on whether they're comfortable with it. They're certainly not prepared to do it. I know that they would do it because that's the type of folks that we have, but I think we're asking them to do too much. And I also think it's blowing up our plan that we have in place for 98% of folks who have come to school. I think that the impact on the teachers, coupled with the cost, coupled with the fact that I don't think this is truly what people are clamoring for. I think this is an option that we have come up with in the last week or so after knowing that online instruction was not working and making a decision that we wouldn't do online instruction. I think this is being presented as a potential solution, which I commend you, Dr. Harrington. Let's have that discussion, because if there are options, let's talk about it. I think it deserves some due diligence. But I don't think this is truly what people are clamoring for, because people recognize the importance of being in the classroom. And I think if we go forward tomorrow and we send out a letter to parents and say, we're looking at this, please come and sign up, and we want to know how much interest there is, I think the barn door is swung wide open, and we're not going to be able to stop it. We're almost going to be forced to continue on if we start enrolling folks. So I think the decision tonight needs to be whether we want virtual or not. And after hearing everything and listening to folks, I'm siding on the side of not putting virtual instruction in place this year and not directing the administration to go forward with a virtual for this 12-week period, with the caveat of numbers could certainly change and funding could change, and we could have a dedicated online program. But for what's being presented right now, I can't do it.
I'd like to see the data. If we only have 100 kids sign up, then we can take, 2 teachers or 1 interventionist. But if we have 5,000 show up, enrolled, we may be in trouble monetarily. So I like to see what the week happens of enrollment.
I'm in the middle, choosing between 2 very bad situations. But I also have to acknowledge that we have parents that are dealing with some very serious issues, and we have to provide some sort of solution. I don't like it. I think it could get worse. I think this is a huge financial commitment that we've been put into. But I'm with you, Andy. I think we owe it to our parents to start getting an option for online. I am a little on the fence if today's the day to pull the trigger. I know everybody is trigger happy for this. We all have crystal balls of what we think it's going to be. If it's worse, every day we buys us more time, more resources, and ability to get better at this. But I do think we should be moving forward with some sort of polling of the audience of providing the solution. We should be working towards this. So that's where I stand.
I used to tell my kids when they were kids, not grown adults, all the time, and I tell my teenagers that I mentor, you cannot make a decision, a good, solid decision, until it's an informed decision. And I think we have a ton of information here, but a critical piece is missing. We don't know how many people are going to pony up to this. Correct. Or are interested in ponying up to this. It is crucial in the communication that we say we are analyzing this. It is not a for sure thing. This is an analysis. And in order for us to analyze it, we need to know your level of interest.
But they also have to know that if they don't tell us their level of interest, they won't be eligible to participate if it does come to pass. So as part of the enrollment process, I know you're going to have the profile of what a successful online student would be. Is there anything that the parent would have to agree to in terms of being there to help their children? We
listed those attributes that the parent, they need a parent or guardian to serve as their learning coach. Or, yes. But as far as a requirement, we did not. So those were some of the ideas that we have put forward, just because we want everyone to fully understand what they would be signing up for if they made that decision. And Dave, like I said, Dave Nielsen is also working on more FAQs to have as much information as possible for the parents to make a decision.
Rather than, just to be a little more pointed with this as the communication, rather than profile of a successful virtual learner, could we not say something a little more
definitive?
Yes, like working contract of a working contract of the student and parent learner or something, just so that they know they're committing to it, or the commitment of the student and parent, something that says to them, this is what you're supposed to do. We're going to do what we can do by providing this, but you got to have skin in this game. I don't know, just a suggestion.
The other thing, after listening to the conversation this evening, what I passed around to you is a draft that Dr. Harrington and his department had put together. I think we need to change some wording in that draft, because the very first sentence says Hurst-Euless-Bedford ISD will offer a temporary virtual classroom option for students. I think it needs to be rephrased to say is considering
Investigating.
offering, or is investigating, or is analyzing the possibility that a temporary virtual classroom option for students. No decision has been made at this time. And I would like to be able to go ahead, if the board agrees, to go ahead and let folks know that final decision will be made at the next board meeting, because I think that's important. If I'm a parent, I want to know, when is that decision going to be made? But then we can also word it such that they understand that really this is an enrollment form. This is a one-time opportunity to enroll should the program become available. We can change some of that wording, because when I was looking at this draft as I passed it around, just listening to the conversation this evening, I feel like we need to change that wording.
Yeah, and again, that would be have to be very clear that if you don't show your interest through enrollment, that you won't be eligible once it comes through. I'm sure Deanne has a way to say that.
Well, and that's who we'll be sitting down with.
Yeah. And that will be, and that is one of the things I just want to be very honest with the board about. That is one of the areas where we will absolutely have to kind of toe the line, is there will be this registration period, and once that period is over, we can't continue to make exceptions and let kids in, because that will begin to change all of the numbers and skew the numbers. That's the challenge we had this past year with the way the Texas Education Agency set their programs up, is that every 6 weeks, kids were bouncing back and forth, and we were trying to reschedule, regroup, shuffle teachers around, and then at any time during the 6 weeks, a student could move to virtual. And so that's part of what we saw throughout this year, both in the instructional disruption to the student, but also in the disruption to the teacher classroom that created a lot of angst and anxiety on the part of the teacher. You never knew, honestly, from day to day, which students that you were going to have, and you certainly never knew from 6 weeks to 6 weeks. So we want to be very definite that if we move forward, if the board approves moving forward, that is finite. This is the registration period. If you do not register during this period, there will not be another opportunity, and you have made a commitment to virtual for that entire period. You won't be moving back to in-person, at the end of 3 weeks if the student decides he or she doesn't like virtual.
Will there be any kind of survey to the teachers, because there may be some teachers who want to move to virtual, or is it, if they're a classroom teacher right now, they're going to stay a classroom teacher, or we just really don't know based on the number?
Yeah, I was going to say, we really don't know. Dr. Hopkins already has identified some teachers that were outstanding last year, so whether or not they become the teacher, their class that they developed might become.
Yeah, and I really want to speak to that, because one of the things that we are attempting to do is we want to create the least disruption we possibly can to those students who are in person. And so one of the reasons that we've looked at instructional specialists, one of the reasons we've looked at our ESSER specialists, is those people are absolutely critical. I'm not denying that. They are a part of our plan. But for 12 weeks, I can temporarily use that teacher. And those instructional specialists are extremely well-versed in the curriculum. They are extremely well-versed in instructional strategies. They are for all intents and purposes, our master teachers on the campuses. But I can use them for 12 weeks, and I can not have to disrupt and start regrouping all of the classes at a particular elementary school. That was kind of the rationale for that. And that's again trying to create the minimal disruption. It certainly does not change the fact, and I don't want any instructional specialist sitting in the audience this evening to think that doesn't mean the position that they currently hold is extremely vital and valuable, because it is. As I said, they are the master teachers. But it is one of those situations of trying to figure out from the options that are available, neither one of which is optimal. What is the option that we can use where the online kids can have access to an absolutely fantastic teacher, but at the same time we don't disrupt, knowing that it is going to impact the instructional plans and what we've had in place. And as Holly mentioned, we're going to have to rethink that, revamp that. Teachers may have to take on more, the in-person teachers, some more responsibility of some of those intervention pieces for their own kiddos. But, our goal then would be to get those instructional specialists, those ESSER interventionists back as soon as we possibly could into, their positions at a campus, because they are critical. And they have been specifically selected for their positions because of their knowledge, because of their expertise, and their ability to work with the staff and move instruction forward. So I do want to be very upfront about the fact these are absolutely vital. I don't want anybody to think, they aren't, we aren't really using them, so we'll just move them to virtual teachers. That's not it at all. We're really having to make a difficult decision and to borrow from Peter to pay Paul.
Have our 21 elementary principals weighed in on it at all? What are their thoughts about having some of their kids go virtual?
Ms. Clark, would you like to come to the podium, please, and address that question, because she has had conversation with all of our elementary principals about the options that are currently available to us.
Evening. Yes, we visited this morning, and I will say, you know, a lot of questions, concerns, as you can imagine, similar concerns as we've heard tonight about not having those folks to do the role that they're hired for. I will say that, you know, as our employees here in HEB, we're willing to do whatever we need to do to help kids the best way we can. But I would be not telling the whole truth if I only said that. I mean, there are concerns about how we'll accomplish it, and what will be the effect on our in-person students. So they understand the position we're in is a difficult one, and they're willing to do what needs to be done. At the same time, what is the cost to our in-person students and our online learners as well? So.
Steve, there's 3 bullet points in this draft. The third one being, it may not be possible for us to accommodate your student upon return from virtual learning at his or her present campus. Why was that put in there? Is there a situation that you all are thinking about where that would apply?
Yes, and I'm going to let Dr. Harrington talk about that because he's worked quite extensively on that, and he and I have had that conversation, so he'll be able to share the
And that's
answer.
when I was referring to the possibility of a student leaves and their campus is already at capacity, so their campus is in overflow. Other students will fill those spots, and now when that student returns, they may not be able to return to their home campus. The same with the schools of choice. They may not be able to return to that school of choice, and it was not their home campus, then they would have to return to their actual home campus. So that we're going to make every effort to return kids back where they were, but we just want to be completely honest with people. We have campuses that are significantly over already capacity, and if they leave those campuses, there's a good chance their spot will not be there upon return.
So would this be just kind of a scenario, Dr. Harrington? So if you have Golden Elementary, 5th grade is at capacity, and a student ends up leaving and decides to go virtual, and during that period in time, another student moves into the neighborhood and enrolls, that student will get that 5th grade spot. So when the student comes back from virtual, there will not be a 5th grade spot open at Golden Elementary, so he may have to go to Silver Elementary. You know, we'll have to make those adjustments.
And then, you know, we have our whole overflow process. And
That's
so
an excellent scenario to put in the FAQs, just exactly how he explained it. Golden Elementary and Silver Elementary, and I love it.
Well, and the mention of FAQs, Julie, have we discussed internally, I mean, there's a lot that has been discussed tonight. Is there a way to get information out to folks in a easily readable fashion, an FAQ? You know, why are we doing this? What is the cost? Why are they not funded by TEA? You know, some bullet points that we've all been getting emails from, you know, hourly.
And we're working with Dave Nielsen, and he's creating it on the website, and it'll be an actual web page with questions and answers.
Yeah, and we have a good model too from Richardson ISD, who's done an FAQ that, you know, actually caused us to think about some things looking at their FAQ we hadn't thought about, but yes.
Well, and my concern with sending out the letter, you know, which would obligate us to do this, I'm a little bit more satisfied with changing some of the wording in here to gauge the interest, but in addition to changing the first sentence, I don't want any language in here that would obligate us, you know, the word will. In the second sentence here, it says this virtual option will continue. I'd like us to consider some language along the line of, should this option be adopted, HEBISD is considering to continue through the second 6 weeks. And then at the end of the first sentence, I would ask you to consider something along the lines of, HEBISD is considering the possibility of offering a temporary virtual classroom option, TVCO, for students enrolled in kindergarten through 6th grade, comma, and wants to gauge community interest, because that's ultimately what we're doing here.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Is that okay with everybody?
Mm-hmm.
And and there need to be something in there, and I'd need more information, probably from Mr. Garcia. I mean, there may be a number that we have to max out at if it turned out to be a very large interest, because we can't push ourselves into recapture. I mean, that's just something that we can't do as a district. That's, pushing us down the road financially that we don't
Once
have any
we're
business
there,
going down.
can't get out.
Yeah.
And if the numbers get there, that may be where some of us no vote.
So there may need to be something in this that says, under certain circumstances, a max capacity. I mean, that would certainly get people to sign up quicker. If we said that there's a potential that this may be maxed out at a certain number of students. But yeah, that's a road that I'm not interested in going down.
And as I said earlier, we have been told there is one school board or one school district in the area that is going to set a max number. And it is going to be a first come, first serve for that max number.
If we decided to do a first come, first serve as we're doing this pre-registration, would we be able to establish who signed up first?
You're doing online registration, so if you set a certain hard stop on how many can register, it would just be, kind of like, anything you sign up for where there's a limited number, whoever gets there and completes the registration process first and it goes through.
And we're able to track that internally.
Just to clarify, he's not saying a stop gate, he's just saying, do you have a date and time of everybody signing up?
Yeah.
I don't know if we can track who did it first. It just wouldn't allow you to enroll after we got to the number.
It seems like every registration coming in would be date and time stamped automatically because they're computers, but,
We should have that. We would not, if we were going to do something like that, we'd have to give it at least a day, because we'd have to make the announcement that it was, if it was going to be a first come, first serve, I mean, that people would have to have time to be prepared for that.
I don't think that we can know that now, right? Because we don't know whether we've got 10 people interested or 10,000 people interested.
we don't know what the limit is. I mean, we don't know,
The other, like I said, we had talked about doing a survey first and then enrollment, but our concern was its time frame. I mean, we've got, if this is going to happen, we have to have numbers to begin building it. I mean, if the board would rather that we send this first out as a survey, we can, but again, it backs us up on time frame.
And I would caution you, when you say survey, you're really wanting to know the people who are going to commit to this online option.
I think
Not just interested.
Yeah, this is enrollment.
This is enrollment.
No, and that's fine. I'm just saying, as you start talking about a first come, first serve, we can't roll that out in the morning.
No.
Does this go out in English, or does it go out in our 3 or 4 primary languages?
Well, okay.
I'm thinking, because if we
Dan's
have
saying
parents that only speak
Dan's
Spanish.
saying we can have it translated in the morning, and, certainly Spanish will
It's
not
gotta
be a
be
problem.
fair
But
to
when
all
we
of our
talk
parents.
about getting it translated into French and Arabic, sometimes that's a little more problematic, but we can put our translators on that.
Joe, when they click the link for enrollment, what kind of data are we gathering from them? I assume school, grade, name. What else?
It was name, student ID, parent name, parent email, phone number, current grade, current campus.
So if they have 5 kids, they have to fill that out 5 times?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I would like to make a motion. I move that the board direct the administration to continue preparation for a short-term virtual option for K through 6 students, including preliminary registration for the program, and bring registration numbers along with projected program costs to the board for final approval at the regularly scheduled final review at the regularly scheduled board meeting on August 23rd, 2021.
Ms. Cole, would you be amenable to have that final decision
Final decision,
to make
yes.
final decision.
Final
at
decision.
that, 'cause we're gonna
You want me to
need
read the whole thing again? I move that the board direct the administration to continue preparation for a short-term virtual option for K through 6 students, including preliminary registration for the program, and bring registration numbers along with projected program costs to the board for final decision at the regularly scheduled board meeting on August 23rd, 2021.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second for the board to direct the administration to continue preparation for a short-term virtual option for K through 6 students, including preliminary registration for the program, and bring registration numbers along with projected program costs to the board for a final decision at the regularly scheduled board meeting on August 23rd, 2021. Is there any discussion? Let's take a vote. All right, and that motion is passed. So we will be discussing this again next Monday at our meeting after we've had a chance to do registration and take a look at the numbers. I want to thank again the administration for putting all this information together for us tonight. You guys did a great job with, I know, a short time frame. And I'd like to thank the board. It was a great discussion, and I'm glad that we were able to at least move something. I mean, for me personally, the only thing that I like about this is that it gives our parents a choice. And I'm not thrilled about virtual in and of itself or the results that we got from it last year. But it's, in these difficult times, I think it's good that we kind of at least move forward to get more information in terms of giving our parents a choice, because this is about all we can do at this point. So I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Julie, thank you for coming tonight to.
Now, let's see if I can get stood up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
just need
you just want to stand up first?